walk you through deploying a private Cloud Foundry Windows Cloud. We start off with a pristine Ubuntu installation that also has Git and Chef version 0.10.4 installed. The 0.6 version has a bug and the deployment won't work with that. Okay, so now we're going to clone the Uhuru VCAP repository. Okay, it's cloning now. And next we're going to clone the Uhuru VCAP Services repository. These are both forks from the original Cloud Foundry repos. Okay, now we have the repos cloned, so we're gonna start the setup. We're going to use a Uhuru configuration for deploying with Chef. This configuration is called Uhuru DevBox. And before we start the deployment, we will configure the domain that we're going to use. So we're just going to call it mycloud.net. And now we're going to run the deployment. Now this is going to take about 20 minutes, roughly 20-30 minutes. Okay, so the deployment is now complete. We can simply start the the Cloud Foundry components. So we're just gonna as we can see, all the services that we need are running, including the Microsoft SQL Gateway. So the easiest way to target this new setup is just add the IP to the host file of the host box. So api.mycloud.net. Okay, so now we're going to target api.mycloud.net. As we can see, it worked. I'm going to add the admin user dev@cloudfoundry.org. Now we have the user and we're logged in. We can see if the .NET framework has been added to the normal list of Cloud Foundry frameworks, and we can see that it's there. So now we're going to continue with the Windows side of the installation. We have here a Windows 2008 server that has IIS installed, and what we need is to get the MSI installer package from the Uhuru software website. Okay, so we're going to the products page. And here we have the download links. And this is a 64-bit box, so I'm going to download the 64-bit .NET DEA installer. And I'm just going to save it on my desktop. Okay, so now that we have the DEA installer downloaded, we can set it up. So we need to do this from command line, and we're going to use MSI exec with an install argument. And then we have to specify some parameters. First one is the base dir. This is where all the droplets will be saved. This directory doesn't have to exist at the time of the installation. Next we have the message bus. So this is a URL that points to the NET server. The credentials for this are the default that a Cloud Foundry installation comes with. And then we have the IP of the Cloud Controller Linux box that we set up earlier. And the default port for the NET server is 4222. We also have to set the maximum memory available for this DEA. I'm going to set it for 2 gigabytes. So this value is in megabytes. And then we can install it. We hit next. We agree with the licensing terms. And the DEA installation is complete. Now we can run services, and we look for the Uhuru.NET Droplet execution agent, and we start it. Now, to see that everything went fine, we can use the event viewer, check out Windows log, application and services logs, in the Uhuru log, and we can see here that the DEA has started properly. We can read that it detected the IIS runtime correctly. So now we're done with the Windows DEA. Next we're going to set up a SQL Server Node that will allow us to provision Microsoft SQL Server databases. Okay. So here we have another Windows 2008 server. This one has SQL Server installed on it, SQL Server 2008. Next step is to download the installer package for the SQL Server Node. So we go to uhurusoftware.com. We go to the products page. And we download the SQL Server Node installer. Again, I'm going to use the 64-bit version. And I'm going to save it on my desktop. Okay, so now that we have the MS SQL Node installer downloaded, we can set it up. Again, we are going to use MSI exec, the install argument, and we have to set the install parameters. First one is the node ID. I'm going to set it to 0. Then again we need the message bus to nats. And then we need connection information for the SQL Server. Now we know that we have a SQL Server running on this box, and the IP for this box is this. We also need a user, which in our case is the sysadmin SA, and a password, which is change me. Okay, and that's it. We can start the installation. Agree with the licensing terms. And that's it. Again, we need to start the service. We have here Uhuru Services. Just start that up. And again, to check that it started properly, we can check the Uhuru log, and we can see that everything started up fine here. And it connected to the message bus. Now we're going to go back to the command prompt that's on the host, and we're going to do a VMC services. Okay, so now we're going to start a Visual Studio instance that has the Uhuru software extensions installed. Okay, so I'm going to create a new project. It's going to be a C# empty web application. I'm going to call it Hello Cloud. And I'm just gonna add a simple default ASPX page. Now we want this application to test database connectivity and the logging functionality of our cloud. So let's just design it. I'm gonna add a grid view to show some database information, and a button to write to DB, and then one more button to throw an exception. Okay. So when we write to DB, I already have some code available. So I'm just going to copy paste that code, and what we have here is just a simple connection to a database whose connection string we have to get from our configuration file, and then each time the button is pressed we create a new table in the database, and we insert 20 rows with some random values, and then we display them in the grid view. This part would show the database functionality of our cloud. Now, as I said, we need to grab the connection string from our configuration file, so I'm just going to add an app setting. And here for the value, I'm going to expect the cloud to write it up for me, so I'm gonna put in this special type of string which will allow the cloud to automatically configure the app after we push it. So the service name that we're going to create will be hello cloud DB. Okay. Now for the other button, we're just gonna throw an exception saying an exception from the cloud. Okay, so now we have to configure this application. Okay, so now that we have our code set up, we can start configuring the app so it's ready to be deployed on the cloud. And as you can see, when you select a project node in the Solution Explorer, there are some new configuration settings in the Properties window. And these settings will allow you to configure the app so that it can be easily deployed to the cloud. Now we're going to start with the name of the app. We're just going to leave it as Hello World. We have to set this value to true if we want our app to be deployed. Framework is correctly detected as .NET. We can see that the .NET framework was properly detected. We are going to have an instance count of 1, leave the memory and the runtime as their default values, and we have to configure a service. Remember that this app requires a database to run, and we called it Hello Cloud DB. So we should configure a service to be provisioned when we push the app. So set a MS SQL database. You can see that we properly detected what services are available on the cloud, and we're going to set the service name to Hello Cloud DB. Now override existing, we can set this to true if we want each time that our app is deployed to delete the service and then add it again, but that's not necessary right now. So now we have services configured, and then we just have to set a URL for our app, and we're just gonna call it Hello World or Hello Cloud .mycloud.net. Okay, so now everything is configured. What these property settings do is they persist everything in a file that sits next to your project file, urucloud.uhcf. Since we persist this next to your project, the configuration travels with your app when you check it into to source control. And now we can build and push. You can see that there's a new context menu item. We just hit that. The application compiles and gets deployed to the cloud. And as you can see, we can already in the Cloud Manager we can see the app that it was deployed. Now it's in a stopped state, so we have to start it. We just sent a start message. Now as you can see, the app has started, and to be able to view it, we're gonna use the trick we used earlier and add that URL to our hosts file. So same IP and hello cloud.mycloud.net. And now we're just going to browse it. Okay. Click write to DB, and we can see that we can properly write to the database. Now I'm going to throw the exception, and we're getting an error. And I'm going to check the logs for this application. We select the View Cloud Apps logs item, and we're gonna take that out and click on View Logs, and as we can see, the log has loaded, and we can see all the events that have occurred on our app, and we can see that we have a unhandled exception error logged. Now, the last thing that I want to show in this video is how we can use our MMC snap-in to manage the cloud. So we just open up a new console and we add the Uhuru Cloud Foundry snap-in. Now the Visual Studio plugin and the MMC snap-in, they're tied to the same manner of storing credentials on the user's box, so we can already see this target available, and we can see the application that we just deployed, and we can see the logs here as well. Other than this, we can see application performance, so we can see for how much time it has been running, memory usage, disk usage, and CPU usage. We can also see cloud information, the frameworks that we support, the runtimes that we support, and the services that are available on the cloud. We can also see the provisioned services and the users that are on the cloud if we are an administrator. Another thing you can do with the MMC snap-in is push applications. So I'm going to demonstrate this now. I'm going to push Umbraco. Umbraco is a CMS written in .NET. It's open source. I'm going to select Umbraco from my hard drive. Now we are guessing these settings here, but usually they should work. The app name is actually the directory name. We create a URL for you, and we detect the framework and the runtime. I'm gonna set a bit more memory for this Umbraco application, and we're gonna require a service for Umbraco, and I've already configured the web config, so the cloud can auto-wire it. The service name will be UmbracoDB, and it's going to be a SQL Server database. So we're going to create that, and now everything's set. We just have to push. Now we can see the app is up there. We're going to wait for it to start, to be in a running state. Great. Now I'm going to browse to the Umbraco application. I've already added Umbraco as a host in my host file, like we did for everything else. And we can browse to the app directly from MMC. And we can see the normal Umbraco installation wizard. Just going to go through the first screens, so we see that the database configuration has been properly set. So you can see that the Umbraco wizard properly detects the changes in the configuration files that the cloud has made. So we can actually install the metadata, and that's what Umbraco is doing right now, and we're done basically. Just have to set a password here. And that's it. We have an Umbraco deployment running. Hope you enjoyed this, and thanks for watching.